Hello and welcome to another episode of Work 2.0, the podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Wells, and this is where we talk about AI, power, and the future of work. Now, when you think of the term Cisco or the certification CISSP, naturally, what are the first things that come to mind? Well, naturally, if you're in the cybersecurity industry or the information technology industry, you would know what those are. The CISSP is a certification globally recognized gold standard for employers when they're looking at evaluating professionals seeking to progress up the ladder, whether you're seeking to advance in the industry as a cybersecurity leader or you want to be a specialist, expert, consultant. You know, the CISSP and similar certifications are the way to go. Well, the company behind that is ISC2. They are globally recognized for their certifications. And today, my next guest is the man at the helm of that organization. He's the new CEO, Scott Beale. And today we're here to talk about AI and ethics and trust and how we can maintain that security, high security standards in a rapidly evolving AI breakneck speed evolving world. So welcome to the show, Scott.
Thank you, Rachel, very much. A pleasure to be here.
Yes, absolutely. So I know I said, I guess I use this term loosely. I said that you're the new CEO of ISC2. We were just talking before and we were saying like, you've crossed 4 months already. Before you know it, next month it's going to be 6 months, right? But I know that even though you're quote unquote new to the role, being the first 4 months must be super hectic for you. There's so much going on. It probably feels like you've been there a year already, right?
It still has that exciting new energy to it, but it's been amazing to join this global organization. 300 staff around the world, 270,000 members across 180 countries, who are truly many of the most impressive cybersecurity leaders in the companies, certainly in the government, in nonprofits around the world. And so it's a very mission-driven community that's trying to keep the world safe and secure, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Absolutely. So prior to joining ISC2, what's your background? What were you doing before? Have you always been in information security?
No, I've always been in mission-driven work. For 25 years, I've been working to keep the physical world safe and secure. I've worked at places like the U.S. Peace Corps, which for 65 years sent Americans overseas to partner with nations to address social issues in their countries. For 15 years, I ran a nonprofit that was also a workforce development program, but focused more on nonprofit NGO leaders called Atlas Corps that worked with professionals from around the world, actually brought them to the United States and gave them training. And I've been in and out of government with State Department and the White House, but really always working with mission-driven teams, trying to advance the larger common good, which is why ISC2 feels so much at home, because this is a group that's committed to keeping the cyber world safe and secure, and most importantly, supporting the workforce that enables that to be true.
Absolutely. Scott, many organizations are racing to deploy AI tools, but we know that in that breakneck pace, that speed, there are fewer who are actually thinking fully and deeply about the implications of what could go wrong until something goes wrong. There's things like shadow AI, and we know that AGI is coming soon as well. How do you believe leaders should build a secure by design mindset before AI technology is even implemented in their organizations?
Absolutely. There's such pressure, it feels like, whether it's among governments or among businesses or among CEO leaders themselves to deploy these tools, to take advantage of the real and perceived efficiencies that are associated with them. But it doesn't take much reading of the newspaper to know the dangers involved in AI, the dangers and the cost, the actual physical and money, and in some cases lives cost associated with cybersecurity attacks. So it's super critical that leaders in particular consider secure by design from the very beginning. Really, what it fundamentally means is that before an AI tool or a product is purchased or even designed or deployed, that they are considering security from the very beginning. My experience as an entrepreneur is that I have a high risk appetite. I'm willing to try new things, trying to get the major benefit out of it. And too often you see people who are either only see the risks, how things are going to go bad, or only see the opportunities, how things might go well. But really, an experienced entrepreneur, an experienced leader knows you need to consider both from the onset and consider security from the beginning. I'll actually give a quick example. I was thinking about this earlier about the car industry. And so when cars were first built, they were actually kind of dangerous. The structure wasn't particularly secure. They didn't have seatbelts unless you paid extra for it. They certainly didn't have airbags. They didn't even have brake lights. I mean, people died in cars, and some of it was preventable. And it took people organizing, saying that cars are unsafe by any speed, to eventually get governments and industry to change. Well, that I feel like is happening with AI as well. In the race to have this technology that allows us to go new places we've never been before, we aren't taking the sometimes simple steps or pause in our development to think through what are some of the preventable risks that exist. And it's not that I'm saying we shouldn't use cars or we shouldn't use AI, but I'm saying that we should build technology in a way where we mitigate risks to keep us safe, especially from things that we can anticipate and put a little effort in on the front side.
Absolutely. I love that comparison you made to cars, because I feel, this is like, it's been termed another great industrial revolution, right?
Right.
So,
right.
Comparison, with any new industrial revolution, there's a lot of risk because it's brand new. It's never, we don't know what guardrails initially to put in place because we don't really know the potential of it. And I think people underestimate the potential of it. You have organizations, like I said at the beginning, with shadow AI, and in leaders underestimating what their people are actually doing with AI right after their noses, right? So just to expand on that, you said to think about that right from the very beginning. Could you provide maybe an example of what's one specific type of risk that should be thought about very early on?
Yeah, well, I may just build off the example that you're talking about with shadow AI to make sure that the listeners are familiar with it, because actually it can sound very nefarious but when I think about shadow AI, my perception of it is it's that if you don't have AI tools and policies in place, your staff are going to do it on the side. And they are going to use these tools because it'll make their lives more efficient and effective. But if it doesn't have the security of the organization, if you're not keeping in mind where data might go, then you could have information stolen. You could have prompt injections into your software. Like you could have secrets gone. You could have, any number of things that could shut down your business or put your staff or members or customers at risk. And that would be with the shadow AI example, because a company is almost too afraid to implement policies that do allow people to use some of these tools, but use them in safe and secure ways. So I think the shadow AI example is great because it just shows that sitting on your hands actually isn't an option. It's telling people, oh, just don't use it, really not the best approach either. Like if everyone else is driving in a car, your employees want to get in a car as well. You need to give people the education, that in some cases certifications or licenses to show that they know how to use it, that you're not just letting your kid get in the car and go crazy with it, but you're giving people who have experience the policies in place and let them use the car. There's still risks associated with the car, but if they're properly trained and we have rules of the road, then you can go a long way with using the technology properly.
Absolutely, 100%. When we talk about keeping up with emerging tech, what would be your advice to C-suite leaders and even senior managers? How can they keep up with the emerging tech and maintain that balance while staying connected to their organizations?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think it feels like you see in the news a greater turnover of CEOs, even in some of the largest companies in the world. Yeah. And I'd be interested to see, like, in 24 months if that is actually true or just something that the press is reporting on. But it does feel like those CEOs and leaders who've risen over the last 10 years may not even be the same ones who are able to navigate the future in the next 10 years. And certainly I believe that a lot of the basics and principles of leadership haven't changed. But you do need a leader who is comfortable in this new and uncertain world, and like knows how to either deal with the technology or is curious, and also knows how to surround themselves with people who are really experts on it. So, I mean, a few kind of thoughts on what you were saying. I think that it certainly is not the case that every CEO or leader needs to chase every new technology. The most successful leaders are not going to be the ones that have the most apps on their dashboard or on their phone. But I do think it's really critical that one's curious, one's open, one likes to test and read articles outside of their industry and explore what other people are using, and kind of having some balance between curiosity and innovation with also a healthy amount of discipline and governance. And that requires both a mindset of seeing the world in a way where you can filter through the noise and focus it on the technologies and trends that are most relevant to your company, but also like a strong structure where you when you do try two technologies, you start small, you pilot, you look for clear success metrics, you keep security and legal and safety issues really at heart, and then surround yourself by people who have different perspectives. I always believe that more diverse teams create better outcomes, and diversity is defined lots of ways, including different academic disciplines and different even mindsets and skill sets. All of that's critical. It's always been critical, but I think in today's dynamic world, in navigating the technology that exists today, it's really critical that you have CEOs who have that perspective and comfort level with trying new things while staying focused on what's important.
Absolutely. Just maintaining that balance, right?
Right.
You don't have to overwhelm yourself with everything, but as long as you keep yourself open. And like you said, with diverse teams, you're delegating to the experts, to the ones who know how to keep their ears to the ground and implement what needs to be implemented. Love that. So let's imagine we're fast forwarding to 9 or 10 years from now. Let's say the year 2035, right? I like to kind of throw out a wild card question. So bear with me. So let's imagine it's 2035, and I think this will probably happen before then, but just imagine we've got AI that's writing code. We already have that. We've got AI that can correct cybersecurity threats on its own. It's running infrastructure. It's responding in the moment. It's doing all of that. What place does the cybersecurity professional have in that world?
Yeah, I mean, I love the thought exercise. I love thinking about 9 years down the road. Especially when sometimes you need to like mentally put yourself a decade in the future, even if that means to prepare for 24 months from now, or perhaps to prepare for what's happening now with Anthropic and Project Mythos and what they're doing in trying to prepare cybersecurity professionals to keep software safe and keep companies and governments safe. So a lot of those principles, and that this is not an abstract thought exercise, right? But let's go with it. Let's go with it. So in 9 or 10 years, I still fundamentally believe that cybersecurity professionals are going to play a really critical role in companies, in governments, in our society. I would argue actually even more so than now as cyber and AI integrates into all aspects of our society. There's going to be already technology touches so much of our lives, but I feel as if it's going to be essentially all encompassing in our economy at that point. And we are going to need professionals who have the judgment and skills and experience and knowledge to be the person in the loop, to be able to define what acceptable risk is, to be able to, validate these AI machines, particularly when novel threats become aware. Certainly, cybersecurity professionals will do less of those rote exercises, the repetitive operational tasks that already we're seeing can be shared with technology and AI, and that their judgment, the governance, the ethics, the resilience, even, by the way, the cybersecurity professional's ability to communicate, to be able to lead teams, to be able to influence boards, to be able to train other humans is going to be even more important, as they can't just rely on their technical abilities. So I think they're going to be more as if kind of orchestrating the risks associated within companies. and they're going to be using the technology to keep everyone safe, but still making sure that they're staying one step ahead of the game, as hackers are using the same technology to kind of try to break in. And one more point, not only do I think cybersecurity workforce is going to be really important, I think ISC2 is going to be really important, if I could be so direct on it, because I think it's our role as the association, which really represents so much of the cybersecurity workforce, to make sure that we're advocating to governments and industry to make sure that the perspective of cybersecurity workforce is at the heart in the beginning, secure by design, when these technologies are developed and laws and policies are developed. We've introduced written by our members, by the way, the cybersecurity profession, a code of professional conduct to guide ethical decision making. Like, this is not going to change in the next, I mean, it will evolve over the next 9 years, but the importance of ethical conduct is not going to decrease. And so having clear standards and clear signals for employers about what is the knowledge, education, skills, and ability they need to hire, and what skills the profession need to have, ISC2 will continue to play a really critical role in setting that standard.
I agree. And see, bring the timeline even closer. I was in a conversation just a few weeks ago on this podcast with the godfather of AGI, Dr. Ben Gretzel. And one he pointed out to me, and one thing he pointed out to me was, and we've heard this prediction also from Sam Altman, that AGI, or artificial general intelligence, will become a reality within the next couple of years. Now, if that's going to be the case, my curiosity is, because we know AI, we need to build guardrails for that, and we're still in the process of doing that as a society, as governments, as organizations. Then AGI is the very next level, right? That can be technically running on its own without human input. That's an interesting reality. It can be a scary reality as well, as far as security is concerned, right? When it comes to the safety of humanity and society. So I'm thinking, if that's going to be the case in like 2 years' time, what would you say are the guardrails that need to be in place so that AGI is safe for humanity and doesn't just take over the world and destroy us all?
Yeah, well, that must have been a fascinating conversation. And, look, to a certain extent, I certainly don't want to guess on what the exact timeline of AGI is going to be, or any one piece of technology. But so again, whether it's nine years or 24 months or at some point in the future, I think fundamentally the truth that we see today, the trends that we see today, really articulating how AI and these other emerging technologies are reshaping how organizations operate, and are reshaping how people need to operate within them, how they make decisions, how they manage risk. And even if you accept that the likelihood that AI will get to a point where it can rewrite its own code to make itself stronger, and that'll accelerate to a point of AGI and almost sentience among AI. What it just shows how critical it is that we design these things from the beginning in a way where safety and security is in place, because it is, if AI is using its own lessons and coding that was originally written by humans and off human knowledge, and then it's rewriting itself to make it better, it's using that base knowledge, those base core principles. And so making sure that foundationally, that safety and strong governance and frankly, human oversight and clear ethical expectations are built in from the very beginning, both for the humans that are using the AI and as the AI improves upon itself. So even with increasingly advanced systems, we need systems that are built from a placement of solid judgment, and humans who are still in the loop and have the ability to operate with these systems, even as they become more critical. I mean, let's make sure the AI is reading the code of professional conduct. Let's make sure that the humans are doing it as well, right? Like, let's be a signal for the companies, for the workers, for the technology about the right way to do this, because these technologies can be very powerful, especially when put in the right hands, to keep us more safe. They don't replace the need for the hands, but certainly the operator needs to know how to use the technology, and the technology needs to be built in a way that working with humans can keep us all safe and secure. And that's what we're all about at ISC2.
Absolutely. So it's not an afterthought. It's something that's happening
Exactly.
from the beginning. Yeah. Well, you and I, we both worked, as you mentioned at the beginning, within government. You know, I've worked in non-profit organizations as well. I've also worked in government contracts across the United Kingdom, and it's very rewarding work. I'm very curious to know, let's imagine you are not at ISC2, let's say you are still working in government, and then for people who also work in government or affiliated with government and in non-profits, where do you think those leaders play a role in defining and ensuring that we have a secure and ethical AI future?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was just in London meeting with the government on behalf of the cybersecurity workforce, and a few weeks ago in Geneva, just last week at the World Economic Forum, with cybersecurity professionals, with government leaders there, as well as leaders of some of the biggest banks and companies, having this conversation. And it's really critical that the workforce be there, be a part of the conversation. And again, it's a real honor to be able to try to make sure that voice is heard. Look, when I was in government, you really do have the appreciation for the fact that you're representing the larger common good, whether it's a state or when I was in the White House. And there's this real sense of responsibility to make sure that you're putting in policies and practices in place that are keeping not only citizens today safe, but are creating a more safe world. And sometimes that means, you know, allowing the free market to innovate and to grow. The government doesn't need to overly restrict companies unnecessarily or be unnecessarily bureaucratic. But governments cannot simply set back. Like we can't just simply set back and say, "Oh, this will all figure itself out," because time and time again, technologies have shown that doesn't work. And I could give you a dozen more examples, like the car example, where later on government came in and said, "Actually, we need to get in place here and make sure that there's some guardrails and safety." License. I mean, a lot of governments will recognize, CISSP recognize their certifications when hiring cybersecurity professionals. That makes sense. Why create your own certification for cybersecurity folks when there's been one that's been around for decades that the top companies, right? So governments don't need to recreate the wheel, but sometimes they need to make sure that the companies and society is using the tools that are available to keep people safe. I'll give one other example too. It's just, most recently I was working with the U.S. Peace Corps, which is also part of the U.S. government. But it's an interesting agency because it works with governments and cultures of people all around the world. One thing you learn in working with the Peace Corps and meeting with foreign ministers and presidents of countries and actually mayors of towns and principals of schools in small villages all over the world is that, like, those relationships that in some cases with the Peace Corps have been built on for decades are actually how things get done. The trust between people, that most societies and cultures are relationship based and not transactional. And so having that ensuring public trust, ensuring that we're working transparently for the larger common good, ensuring effective ethical leadership, accountability, and long-term thinking is really critical in government, in nonprofits, and certainly in cybersecurity, even if you're in the private sector.
You're right. I think the beauty of working in nonprofit or in government is you have, like, your arms are spanning, like you said, when you're working at Peace Corps, several directions. You're partnering with so many partners, so many stakeholders at different levels, and having that impact in such a profound way at so many levels, and where you can't directly impact a certain, geographical location or a demographic, your partner can, and so you're working with them for that. I think that's fascinating. Definitely rewarding work.
Yeah, but even in the private sector, even the private sector that's, profit driven, hitting their their quarterly financial goals. Publicly traded companies have boards and shareholders who want to make sure that they're making the most money. Even in those companies, because I was talking to some of those banks and companies last week, like they know that investing in cybersecurity, protecting AI, building safe and transparent systems also protects companies, also protects customers, and it is cheaper to invest in the proper training and technology on the front end than it is to roll the dice and then hope that you don't get eventually hacked, which is a really bad bet. Like the house loses in this situation, right? And it's like you just to assume that you're not going to get hacked or that you can just pray and patch is not the right way to handle these things. So sure, the government should do it from a sense of public responsibility. Nonprofits need to do it from the sense of sort of mission-driven impact. But even companies need to realize that they need to weigh the opportunities and the risks to keep their customers and society safe.
Absolutely. And it also builds trust with their customers. I mean, their customers may end up your competitor, you know?
Yeah,
Scott,
exactly.
thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing this with our audience. To our listeners, thank you so much for listening and tuning in or watching Work 2.0, the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, definitely feel free to rate this podcast, comment and share this with a coworker or friend, or even a manager or a founder or your boss, so that you can be equipped and your team can be equipped for the future of work. And I will see you in next week's episode of Work 2.0, the podcast.